Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm bringing you the next episode in the love story of Ly Hoai Ca and Officer Hung, a journey filled not only with tears, but also with faith, strength, and boundless love for little Tony. As many of you already know, over the past months, Hoai Ca and Hung have been side by side, caring for and teaching Tony, their young son who is undergoing special treatment. The first signs of progress have brought them great hope, yet this journey is still long and full of challenges ahead. And in today's episode, a familiar face returns, Hung's mother. After a long time living far from her son and grandson, she finally leaves her hometown to visit the city, carrying with her both longing and quiet worries. The moment she steps through the small gate of their new home, her eyes stop at the sight of Tony laughing happily in Hoai Ca's arms. She freezes, overcome with emotion, love, and compassion. Hung rushes out to greet her, his voice trembling. "Mom, I'm sorry I haven't been home much lately. I just wanted everything to be ready before you came." His mother smiles gently and places a hand on his shoulder. "My son, I don't need anything grand. Just seeing you and Hoai Ca taking care of that little boy together like this, that's more than enough to warm my heart." From that moment, the atmosphere in the house changes. It becomes warmer, livelier, and filled with laughter. But just then, an unexpected message from the hospital arrives, leaving Hung frozen in place and Hoai Ca silent, her eyes full of worry. What awaits them next? Will Hung's mother's return bring peace, or mark the beginning of a new turning point in their journey of healing? Stay tuned until the end of today's video to find out what happens. And don't forget to leave a comment to cheer for Hoai Ca, Hung, and little Tony. A week had passed since Tony began his speech therapy. Though the time was short for Hoai Ca and Hung, it felt like a long journey, one measured in patience, perseverance, and endless love. Every morning, before the first rays of sunlight could chase away the mist, Hoai Ca would take Tony to the therapy center. She held his tiny hand tightly, sometimes having to coax him gently for a long while before he was willing to walk. Behind them, Hung would often stop by before heading to his police unit, just to see his son for a moment, gently pat his head and whisper, "Do your best today, son. When I get home, I'll tell you a story." At first, Tony could only move his lips silently. Each time the teacher demonstrated a sound, his wide eyes followed every movement of her mouth, as if trying to memorize it. Some days, he grew tired and buried his head into his mother's shoulder, pouting and refusing to cooperate. Hoai Ca could only hold him close, softly rubbing his back. "It's okay, my love. You can take your time. Mommy will walk with you till the very end." And so, day after day, the three of them kept going with quiet determination. Hung became a more attentive father than ever, printing extra flashcards in the evenings so Hoai Ca could continue lessons at home. Meanwhile, Hung's mother, who had come from the countryside, made sure every meal was filled with nutritious food for her grandson. The once silent home now echoed with small, hesitant syllables, faint but priceless. Then, one morning, something miraculous happened in class. The teacher asked, "Tony, do you miss Grandma today?" Tony tilted his head slightly, his eyes sparkling, and turned toward Hoai Ca. His voice trembled, halting but clear. "B, Ba, G, Grandma." The room fell silent for a heartbeat. The teacher's face lit up with joy. Hoai Ca froze, tears streaming down her cheeks before she even realized it. By chance, Hung had dropped by in the middle of the session. He stood still at the doorway, gripping the handle tightly. Then, slowly, he stepped forward, knelt, and wrapped his son in his arms, whispering with emotion, "That's my boy, you did it." Applause and laughter filled the small room. The therapist smiled warmly and said, "You were lucky to bring him early. If it had been later, his nerves and language development might have been severely affected. Now, as long as you keep up the routine, he'll make fast progress." Those words reignited their faith. Both Hoai Ca and Hung knew that every sleepless night, every tantrum, every tear, all of it had been worth it. Because now, they could truly see the light at the end of the tunnel. That evening, the house was filled with the comforting aroma of dinner. Hung's mother had cooked a hearty meal, braised fish, vegetable soup, Fried eggs, simple dishes, yet rich with love. She ladled out the soup and smiled gently. So my grandson finally spoke today? I knew it. With love, nothing is impossible. Hoai Ca lowered her head, her voice choked with emotion. Thank you, Mother. Without you by my side, I don't think I could have made it this far. The old woman placed a hand on her shoulder, eyes soft and kind. Raising a child takes more than knowledge, my dear. It takes heart. You're doing wonderfully. Be patient, and soon Tony will speak just like any other child. Outside, the evening breeze gently swayed the curtain. The warm yellow light fell upon the faces of 3 generations: grandmother, father, mother, and the little boy who had just spoken his very first word. Hung looked at his son, his heart swelling with quiet happiness. He turned to Hoai Ca, their eyes meeting, silent, yet deeply connected. Through all the storms they had weathered, this one tiny word, grandma, mom, made their entire world glow. A peaceful night passed, soft yet profound, marking a small but unforgettable milestone in their healing journey, where love itself had become the greatest miracle of all. Tony's school was a special support center, a place for children with delayed speech, autism, or communication difficulties, where therapy was built around speech practice and direct interaction. Each room there was designed with warmth and care: colorful walls, wooden blocks in the play corner, pictures of animals, and tiny chairs just the right size for every child. The atmosphere was always lively, not from noise, but from the fragile, precious sounds of little voices learning to speak for the very first time. The teacher always began each class in a soft, gentle tone. Let's greet each other. 1, 2, 3. Hello. The children replied in their own ways, some with a faint sound, some only by moving their lips, but for the parents watching, each tiny response was nothing short of a miracle. Tony was the same. At first, he only sat quietly, observing. But little by little, thanks to the teacher's patience and Hoai Ca's boundless love, his eyes began to shine with more awareness, and his small voice slowly found its first sounds. The center was funded by social organizations, so there were no tuition fees, only meals and basic living expenses. For many families, that alone was a blessing. But Hung, ever the thoughtful father, wanted more for his son. He wanted Tony to have every possible opportunity, more hours of training, and a better environment to help him integrate as early as possible. One evening, after Tony had fallen asleep, the soft light in the house reflected on Hung's pensive face. He opened his notebook, calculating expenses, before turning to Hoai Ca. I'm thinking of enrolling him in extra sessions. There's another center nearby, more specialized, with one-on-one therapy. It's a bit expensive, but I think it's worth it. Hoai Ca hesitated, concern clouding her face. But what about the rent, food, and your mother's hospital bills? Hung smiled gently, interrupting her. I'll handle it. Our boy needs time and opportunity. You just make sure to eat well and stay healthy to take care of him. Leave the rest to me. His voice carried no trace of doubt. In his eyes, there wasn't blind sacrifice, only the deep, unwavering love of a father determined to give his son a better future. From that day on, Hung began working extra shifts after his police duties, sometimes as a construction helper, other times doing night security at building sites. Every bit of money he earned was carefully placed into a small envelope labeled Tony's tuition. Seeing her son's exhaustion, Hung's mother's heart ached. She said softly, Hung, you don't have to work yourself this hard. But he simply smiled, his tone steady and warm. It's all right, Mom. Even if I worked my whole life, it wouldn't compare to hearing my son call me Dad. That single sentence left both Hoai Ca and his mother speechless. In that moment, they understood some men don't need to express love with grand gestures. You only have to look into their eyes, or see what they do in silence, to realize that an entire sky of affection is quietly sheltering their family. Outside, the night wind rustled through the leaves. Inside the little house, 3 generations slept peacefully, simple, serene, and safe. And within that stillness, a great love was quietly nurturing the miracle called Tony. At the center, Tony was not alone. Every morning, when Hoai Ca led her son into the classroom, she would see dozens of little faces, innocent eyes, bright yet filled with quiet sadness because they still could not speak. Laughter mixed with tears, the clattering of toys, and the teacher's gentle words of encouragement all blended together into a special symphony, a symphony of hope. Some children were already 4 years old and still hadn't said a single word. Each time the teacher called their name, they only looked up briefly, then lowered their heads and hugged their stuffed bear tightly, eyes full of confusion. Other children spent sleepless nights, murmuring half-formed sounds in their dreams, their grandmothers staying awake beside them, whispering comfort and wiping away tears. And there were children who, after hundreds of hours of therapy, could finally utter just one sound, ah, yet to their parents, that one sound was nothing less than a miracle. Watching all this, Hoai Ca often stood silently, her heart heavy. Every time Tony smiled, she felt joy, but also a deep empathy for the other mothers around her, who were fighting their own silent battles day after day. One afternoon, while waiting for her son's session to finish, Hoai Ca sat and chatted with an elderly woman, thin, silver-haired, her hands rough and worn by time. The old woman shared that her son had passed away early, and her daughter-in-law worked far from home, leaving her alone to care for a grandson with a speech disorder. Her voice trembled. The tuition, the meals, sometimes I don't know how to manage. But when I see him smile, I somehow find the strength to keep going. Hoai Ca gently held those frail hands and said softly, I know that feeling. I've been afraid too. I've wanted to give up more than once. But I believe that as long as we don't let go, miracles will come. I'll help however I can. We'll get through this together. The old woman looked at her, eyes glistening, and smiled, a tender smile etched with years of hardship. You have such a kind heart. Heaven surely blesses people like you and Hung. In that moment, in a place far from home, 2 women, one old, one young, found a quiet connection, a bond of love, empathy, and the enduring strength of motherhood. Outside the window, sunlight filtered gently through the trees, spreading across the classroom floor where Tony was carefully stacking colorful wooden blocks. He looked up, saw his mother and the old lady smiling, and instinctively smiled back, a pure, innocent smile that lit up the room. And in that moment, Hoai Ca felt it clearly. Though the road ahead was still long and full of challenges, as long as hearts like these still beat, love would remain a light that never fades. At the center, Tony was not the only child. Every morning, when Hoai Ca took her son to class, she would see dozens of little faces, eyes so clear and innocent, yet carrying a quiet sadness because they could not yet speak. Laughter mingled with tears, the sound of toys clattering, and the teacher's gentle words of encouragement blended together into a single melody, a melody of hope. Some children were already 4 years old and still hadn't spoken a single word. When the teacher called their names, they would only lift their heads, glance up briefly, then clutch their teddy bears tightly, eyes filled with confusion. Others stayed awake through the night, murmuring fragmented sounds in their dreams, their grandmothers sitting beside them, soothing and wiping away tears until dawn. And there were those who, after hundreds of therapy hours, could finally make one small sound, ah, yet to their parents, that sound alone was nothing short of a miracle. Seeing all this, Hoai Ca often fell silent. Every time Tony smiled, she felt happiness, but also the deep ache and empathy for all the other mothers around her, who were also fighting each day against that frightening silence. One afternoon, while waiting for her son's session to end, Hoai Ca sat talking with an elderly woman, thin, silver-haired, with rough hands marked by years of labor. The woman shared that her son had passed away early, and her daughter-in-law worked far from home, leaving her alone to care for a grandson with a speech disorder. Her voice quivered as she said, The tuition, the food, sometimes I don't even know where to find enough. But when I see my grandchild smile, I feel the strength to keep going. Hoai Ca held her fragile hands and spoke softly. I understand that feeling. I've been scared too. I've wanted to give up. But I believe that as long as we don't let go, miracles will come. I'll help however I can. Let's keep going together. The old woman looked at her, eyes shining and a warm, wrinkled smile spread across her face. "You're such a good person. Heaven will bless people like you and Hung." In that quiet moment, in a place far from home, two women, one old, one young, found an invisible thread connecting them: love, empathy, and the unbreakable strength of motherhood. Outside the window, sunlight filtered through the leaves, spilling across the classroom floor where Tony was carefully stacking colorful wooden blocks. He looked up, saw his mother and the old woman smiling, and instinctively smiled back, an innocent, radiant smile that could melt any heart. And in that instant, Hoai Ca felt it deeply. Even if the road ahead was long and filled with obstacles, as long as there were hearts like these, love would remain a light that never goes out. At the center, Tony wasn't the only child. Every morning, when Hoai Ca led her son into class, she saw dozens of little faces, clear, innocent eyes, yet shadowed with sadness because they still couldn't speak. Laughter mixed with tears, toys clattered on the floor, and the teacher's gentle voices of encouragement blended together into one special melody, the melody of hope. Some children were already 4 years old and hadn't spoken a single word. Whenever the teacher called their names, they just looked up, then lowered their heads and clung tightly to their teddy bears, eyes full of confusion. Others stayed awake all night, murmuring broken sounds in their dreams, their grandmothers sitting beside them, comforting, wiping away tears. And there were children who, after hundreds of hours of therapy, could only make one small sound, but to their parents, that sound was nothing short of a miracle. Seeing this, Hoai Ca often fell silent. Every time Tony smiled, she felt happiness, yet her heart ached for the other mothers around her, who were also fighting day after day against that heavy, terrifying silence. One afternoon, while waiting for Tony to finish class, Hoai Ca sat beside an elderly woman, thin, silver-haired, her hands rough and calloused from a lifetime of work. The woman told her that her son had died young, her daughter-in-law worked far away, and she alone was raising a grandson with a speech disorder. Her voice trembled as she said, "The fees, the meals, sometimes I don't even know how to make ends meet. But when he smiles, I somehow find the strength to keep going." Hoai Ca gently held her wrinkled hands and replied softly, "I know that feeling. I've been scared too. I've wanted to give up. But I believe if we don't let go, miracles will come. I'll help however I can, we'll keep trying together." The old woman looked at her with teary eyes, a gentle smile blooming on her wrinkled face. "You're such a kind girl. Heaven will surely bless people like you and Hung." In that moment, in a place far from home, two women, one old, one young, found a quiet bond between them: love, empathy, and the steadfast strength of motherhood. Outside the window, sunlight filtered softly through the trees, falling across the classroom floor where Tony was carefully stacking colorful wooden blocks. He looked up, saw his mother and the old woman smiling, and smiled back, an innocent, radiant smile. At that moment, Hoai Ca felt it clearly. The road ahead might still be long, and hardships would surely come. But as long as hearts like these still exist, love will always remain a light that never fades. That day, after spending more than half a day at the market, Hung finally sold all 2 bunches of bananas. The ripe, golden bananas with their sweet fragrance were carefully weighed and wrapped for each customer. When the last buyer left, all that remained was his old bicycle and a few damp bills tucked inside his rain-soaked shirt pocket. The drizzle continued to fall. His hair was wet, his clothes clung to his body, yet inside, Hung felt strangely light and at peace. He looked up at the gray sky and let out a quiet sigh, as though releasing the weight on his heart. Every coin he had earned that day, no matter how small, was a piece of strength, a spark of hope for his wife and child. He knew Hoai Ca was waiting in the faraway city, caring for Tony on her own, while Mother Ha stayed home, worrying about him, making sure he had warm meals and medicine each day. When he returned home, Hung quickly changed out of his wet clothes and walked to the kitchen, where Mother Ha was busy stirring a pot of soup. Steam rose thickly into the air, and the smell of fresh herbs filled the small house, wrapping him in a familiar warmth that carried him back to childhood. She looked up and frowned when she saw him drenched. "It's freezing outside. Why didn't you wait until the rain stopped? What if you catch a cold?" Hung smiled gently, his tone full of respect. "I'm used to it, Mom. Besides, I sold all the bananas today. That's one less thing to worry about." She nodded slowly, eyes kind but full of concern. "You work too hard. If Hoai Ca knew, she'd cry for sure." Hung chuckled softly, poured her a cup of hot tea, and handed it over with both hands. "I can handle it. You take care of yourself too, Mom. It's getting colder in the mornings. I'll call Hoai Ca tonight, remind her to be careful in the city. Tony's been talking more lately. I bet she's overjoyed." She nodded, her eyes glistening with pride as she looked at her son. Though she said nothing, her heart swelled. The once reckless young man she raised had grown into someone who lived for his family, someone who knew how to love and sacrifice for others. When Hung put on his jacket and headed out again for work, the rain still hadn't stopped. Mother Ha stood at the porch, watching his figure fade slowly into the mist. The hum of his motorbike grew faint, then disappeared at the final bend of the village road. A gust of wind brushed past, tugging gently at her sleeve, as if carrying her quiet prayer away into the night. "Please, Heaven, keep my son safe and strong, so he can continue caring for his wife and child." She slowly closed the door. The warm light from inside spilled softly across the porch, like a small flame glowing through the rain, a light of love and patience kept alive by a mother's silent heart. Their lives were still full of challenges, but at least they were moving in the right direction. Tony was receiving early intervention, learning day by day to pronounce words, to look into his mother's eyes, and to smile again, his very first smile after months of silence. Hoai Ca remained strong, her slender shoulders never once giving in. Each day, she stayed by her son's side, recording every little improvement to tell Hung about during their nightly calls. And Hung the father, the husband, quietly carried every burden. Rain or shine, he worked tirelessly, always finding new ways to earn a little extra, hoping only that his son would have the best possible care. Far away, the elderly mother, after years of mistakes, was silently making amends. She saved every coin, trying to find their old home again, wishing that one day, when she walked through that familiar doorway, it would no longer be with guilt, but with forgiveness. Each of them carried their own struggles. Yet when all hearts were pointed toward one thing, family, no storm could truly tear them apart. Their small house, though humble, overflowed with love. Tony's laughter, Hoai Ca's gentle voice, Hung's hurried footsteps, and Mother Ha's quiet prayers, all intertwined, forming a warm melody in the middle of a stormy world. Though the storms outside had not yet passed, inside that little home, faith, family, and hope were taking root, growing stronger each day. Because as long as love remains, no rain will ever be strong enough to wash away true happiness. Stay tuned for the next episode tomorrow to see the newest chapter in the healing journey of Hoai Ca, Hung, and little Tony. And don't forget to leave your comments, wishes, and words of encouragement below, because your love and support are also part of the strength that keeps them moving forward.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Bây giờ ở chỗ mình hiện tại thì đang bão, trời mưa rất là to và cũng gió nữa nên là nó có hơi ồn ào một tí, thì mình đang cố gắng để có thể hoàn thành video và đi ngủ. Bây giờ là gần 10 giờ đêm rồi và mình vẫn chưa có hoàn thành xong video hôm nay. Tại vì hôm nay là mình muốn làm video mới nhất nên là mình cũng có đợi kênh chính ra thì mình mới làm, để mình mới viết nội dung, nên là nó cũng có hơi trễ một tí. Và bây giờ thì là gần xong rồi, hầu như là mình edit xong hết rồi, mình mới bắt đầu quay và mình nối vào. Mọi người hãy theo dõi hết video của mình nhé, và đừng quên đăng ký kênh, bật chuông thông báo lên để không bỏ lỡ bất kỳ video nào trong những tập tiếp theo nhé. Cảm ơn mọi người rất là nhiều. Chắc là do trời mưa to quá, chắc mọi người cũng không có nghe rõ mình nói gì, nhưng mà chúc mọi người một buổi tối thật ấm áp và ngủ ngon. Bye bye.